special program on the federal. Election eve populism is now an accepted practice in Indian elections. Freebies are announced by the political parties to attract the voters. The party in power deploys this election eve tool partly to offset the anti incumbency. The government in power often thinks that the voters will forget and forgive their acts of omission and commission and reward them with another term. Those in opposition to end up making similar promises, largely to keep up with those in power. We are witnessing the same phenomena playing out in Bihar assembly elections due next month. To discuss this issue, I am joined by Ashok Mishra, Patna based senior journalist, A. Kalai Arasan, an economist with MIDS or Madras Institute of Development Studies, and Puneet Yadav, political editor of the Federal. Kalai is based out of Chennai and Puneet is in Delhi. All of you are welcome to the show.
Pleasure.
Now I begin with, So I begin with Ashok Mishra. Mishra ji, Chief Minister Nitish Kumar seems to be facing the toughest political battle of his lifetime. He has, showered his electorate with a number of freebies. He has already transferred rupees 10,000 into bank accounts of 1.21 crore beneficiaries under Mukhyamantri Mahila Rozgar Yojana. He has also promised a number of other benefits to the electorate, especially the women. Now, responding to this, RJD leader Tejasvi Yadav, who has emerged as a challenger to Nitish's throne, has promised one government job per household in Bihar. Now, how is this panning out on the ground? Can you tell us since you are in Patna?
Well, Sri, Nitish Kumar and the NDA government has announced a total freebie package of nearly 50,000 crore in the last 2-3 months. And as you said, 10,000 each to nearly 1.21 crore women. Apart from that, he has, increased the stipend of ASHA workers. So the total 50,000 crore freebie is going to be a burden on the state exchequer because the total value of budget in Bihar is nearly 2.50 lakh crore. So it's going to, increase the burden on the state exchequer. And what will happen to the next government, only God will tell. Given the poor economic, situation in Bihar.
No, Mishra ji, just hold on 1 minute. We will come to the budget issue, the numbers and other things later. We also have Kalai Arasan to speak on. I just want to know from you how it is being impacting on the ground. What is it? Because it's been 2 days now. First, Nitish announced, and then after that, he has actually not just announced, passed on in 3 tranches to nearly 1.21 crore beneficiaries. And now Tejasvi has come out with this. So what is it? How is it people are receiving that? That's what I want to know first.
Look, in my opinion, such freebies don't matter in the caste-ridden society which you have in Bihar. The voters are, divided on the basis of caste, and 2 major groups, Mahagathbandhan and NDA, are the 2. They are trying to build caste calculation, caste combinations, and the voting will eventually be on the basis of caste combination, which every political party, since the candidates are to be announced in a couple of days, 2-3 days, Jan Suraj has already issued its first list. So I am not convinced that such freebies are going to impact much. They have been doing it. In fact, it's an exercise to counter the anti-incumbency which this government is facing these days. I don't think it is going to impact much because the caste calculus, caste combination is much more important in Bihar while deciding to vote for any group or any political combination. I'll tell you one more point that Nitish Kumar government has been facing it. He was earlier not convinced to announce any freebies. In fact, when there was a demand for free electricity on the model of Delhi government, he vehemently, categorically opposed it, saying that no, we are giving the subsidies and we are not going to give free electricity to the consumers. We buy electricity and so we will have to sell it. But of course, we are giving. I don't think this freebie culture is going to make much impact on the electoral preferences of the people in Bihar, given the caste formation and including the usage of the symbol on the basis of caste. One thing I would like to tell
Okay,
you that
Mishra, I just want to ask you. I mean, I maybe you're saying caste would take precedence over all these issues, but when there is a very closely contested election, last results, both the sides, both NDA and Mahagathbandhan, almost got the same. I think 37.2% vote share. So, even a little, swing here or there could make a large difference. In such a situation, won't freebies matter? Are you yourself are saying that, it would have resulted in reducing the impact of anti-incumbency?
yeah, certainly an attempt to reduce the impact of anti-incumbency, and the NDA government may get a little bit benefit on the basis of the freebies they have announced. But overall, as you said last time, the vote differences of both the combination was nearly 15,000 votes. 15,000 votes. This time, and last year, Mr. Chirag Paswan had fought the elections independently. This time he is with the NDA. So it's an addition to the NDA. One point. Another point is the VIP, which is with the Mahagathbandhan this time. They have built up, a very good combination. The votes, if you see the percentage of votes cast plus, you will find it that Mahagathbandhan is on the weighing heavily on the NDA caste calculation. These freebies, of course, are going to annul or going to confuse voters and to counter the caste feelings of the people. I don't think this is going to make much impact on the voters, especially those who are divided on the caste basis. Yeah, yes.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that question, but before that, I just want to ask you. I'll now go. I'll come back to you later. I'll go to Kalayarasan. How do you view this development in Bihar, uh, basically from Chennai, where which I think is a place which I can say without any contradiction, is the land of election freebies. What is your perception as an economist? How do you see this?
Yes, thanks. I think first we need to understand, of course, as you mentioned, that populism is not new to, or freebies are called as a populism or dole out, not new to India, particularly for states like Tamil Nadu, and it looks like it's all same across India. But I think we need to make some distinction here, which I would call as a development enhancing populism versus some kind of compensatory election driven populism. So I would prescribe, it's I think populism also not just India, it's across the world and most of the global south countries, Brazil, Mexico, you'll find some kind of populism. But the distinction here is the development driven, which is some way it complements the economic growth in the sense of having a midday meals, making sure the kids go to school, making sure that nutrition is improved. Some of these aspects actually really work, which actually the long run build a human capital formation, enhanced education outcome, enhanced health outcome. Whereas the compensatory driven, which is tied with electoral politics, with every 5 year cycle, often do not complement the economic growth. In fact, it squeezes the state capacity, reduces the resources available for other what you call as a productive building assets or capital formation, human capital formation. before this. Why then it is not? I mean, I would say it's not workable in Bihar, and but it is in the interest of the long run of Bihar development. We need also should know what is the economic status of Bihar. How different is the economic structure of Bihar from rest of India, or particularly say from Tamil Nadu or other developed states? I would like to give 3 points, which actually would be very revealing. In fact, I mean, we should give partly a credit to Nitish Kumar for last 15 years making the growth of some kind of dynamism in Bihar economic growth. But that growth has been largely driven by consumption, not by any productive investment, I would say. What I mean by consumption here, if you look at the states, the relationship between consumption and income, probably the Bihar is one of the few states where people actually consume more than what they earn. The state that produces income, it's called as GSTP, that in other measures. In a sense, it is actually the income goes from outside as a migrant, and people tend to consume. That consumption actually drives the growth, which gets
No, no,
clearly.
just hold on. I mean, this is your first point. Let me just ask you a question here. You are saying in Bihar, consumption is more than income.
Yeah.
And are you basing it on the basis of GST collections? Because
Yeah,
GST
yeah, no,
collections could
yeah,
be
yeah. I
more.
am making a point.
One minute.
Yeah, yeah,
GST
yeah.
collections could be more in a state like Bihar or Uttar Pradesh because lots of grants are transferred to the state, which is not available to developed state.
Yeah,
Compare
yeah, yeah.
relatively, and they purchase on the basis of that, and that results in higher GST. Can it be a real measure
No,
then?
yeah, I'll come back to that. That's a good question. There are two ways to say this. What I mean by consumption-driven economic growth. One is the private income coming from outside of the state, which I mean by the migrant income. That
Transfers.
comes back to the state. That is one way of transfer, which I call as a private transfer. And you're absolutely right. The state is also, Bihar is one of the few states heavily dependent on central transfer. If I have to give a number, it's everyday functioning of the state. I mean, even the revenue, the functioning of the basic functioning of the government, 70% of its revenue come from central transfer. Can you imagine? In the sense, you have a state whose regular functioning of the state requires a transfer from the center, both in terms of the taxation, I mean tax transfer, which you call as a fiscal transfer via finance commission, and also grants. So obviously these two transfer, the fiscal transfer from from Delhi, and the private transfer from migrant labor, poor labor from across the world, who actually gives money, sends money back to their respective families, which actually I would say makes the consumption actually is the main source of growth. How do you measure this? If you look at the MPC, which is called the monthly per capita expenditure, generally measured by the NSSO data sets, and its ratio to the per capita income, Bihar is one of the highest. In the sense that every household tend to consume more than what it actually produces as a whole. So how this is possible? It's precisely because, as I said, the migrant and the private side, and is heavily dependent on the state of the fiscal transfer. In the contrast, if you look at the developed states, they actually generate their own revenue. It's the 25% at least. I mean, at least 75% of the revenue come from their own state. The Bihar is the only state where is heavily dependent on. So it's not surprised actually if you say every politician in Bihar asks when they make a coalition with the federal government, the central government, the first thing they ask is to make Bihar is a special status, which is basically you will get a more transfer. So now I'll come back to the basic point. So why this is not sustainable? Why this kind of freebies, which I call as a compensatory freebies, will not enhance development? One, it is a consumption driven, not really of the investment driven. Second, there's also another data, CMA data shows that here, which says the Bihar is also state of the contractors, not really in entrepreneurs. Remember, this is, if you look at the recent data, the CMA says out of, if you're ranking the state actually, if you look at the government projects, it stands at the third. In the sense, it's able to, fulfill all the government contracts, which is basically, politician contracts are very much tied and which clearly, connected to the electoral dynamics of the state. Whereas if you look at the private entrepreneurship, almost nil. And the private investment, which you call as a capital formation, almost like 4% of its GSDP. And which is in fact more revealing if you look at what the economics call the credit deposit ratio. In the sense, every household that the BRA households deposits money, that part of money actually goes out of the state and being invested, say in Bihar, sorry, in Chennai or Bangalore. I mean, put it in other words, every deposit made in Patna or Gaya is being invested in Bangalore or in Kolkata, Bangalore or in Bombay or in Chennai, instead of putting money or developing, reinvesting some economic activities within Bihar. In a way, there is a net resource or net capital flow from Bihar, which makes that, it is definitely a consumption driven growth. There is no investment, there is no economic dynamism. This is the second aspect. It is simply a land. I mean, as I mentioned, the state of contractors, not an entrepreneurs. Third thing, this is heavily driven by the central transport. Therefore, it is not. I would say it is not sustainable. I'm not against freebies, by the way. I mean, some kind of populism is required. It is actually part of our economic structure. But that populism has to be linked with the broader developmental processes. That has to enhance some way in the kids, enhancing the educational outcome or health outcome, or making the learning outcome better. These are the freebies that is known in India, and some kind of compensation is also important. But looks like the promises that I look at the politicians, I don't think it is very much connected with what the economy requires. I don't think it is connected with the developmental structure, which I think it's simply a compensatory, electorally tied populism, which might not be workable or sustainable given the priori economic, their economic structure. I think that.
Okay, thanks, Kalai. I'll come back to it because this is a very interesting thing with what you said, that it is more compensatory in nature and is not leading to any real economic development. I'll come back to that because this one particular thing, rupees 10,000 per person, is basically, it's being designed as something else. Whether it will work or not, I'll come back to that. Before that, I'll go to Puneet. What is it you're picking from ground, Puneet? Because especially from political circles, you are in Delhi, you know what's happening. Though you have a distant view, what is the logic behind this? Because on the face of it, when Nitish announced this Mahila Rozgar Yojana, and the first tranche was actually transferred by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his, he did a telecon address. It was termed as a master stroke. Many political observers said it's a master stroke now. But then those who believed in fiscal prudence, many people said, look, it's not going to work. It's unachievable. And but then Tejasvi, instead of doing something else, ended up doing, which seems even more impossible, that every household, his announcement is that every household which will have one government job. Is it really feasible? Because there could be more than 2 crore households, and current government job is about 33 lakh or some such number. So how is it panning out?
Yeah, thanks, Srini. Well, I think the first thing that we need to understand is to expect that there is a kind of equilibrium between electoral promises and fiscal prudence. It is a bit too much. You will never find fiscal prudence in electoral promises. Whichever side of the political divide you may be, whether you're talking about the promises being made by the NDA or the promises being made by the Grand Alliance. Because if you look at fiscal prudence, you will not be able to do electoral politics. It is as simple as that, whether one likes it or not, whether, Gairasan may not agree with me. But on the ground, that is how it works. If you start explaining to the people why they are not being able to, why the government is not being able to generate jobs for them, or why there are the monthly income for people in Bihar in the urban areas is only around 2,217 rupees. In the rural areas, it's the average monthly income is only about 1,700 rupees. They'll throw you out even before the elections if you start explaining to them that, okay, this is why you will stay the way you are. So you have to make it attractive for them, the prospect of voting these parties to power. And so naturally, you'll have to promise. And we can't deny that elections have, over a period of time, become highly transactional. You give something to the public, you expect their vote in return. The public also expects you to give something to them. It's as simple as that. Now, the whole thing of the Mahila Rozgar Yojana and the 10,000 rupee deposit, that's been made. It's also tethered to this thing of a review within 6 months, following which another, the remaining part of the 1.90 lakh will be given after a review. So that's a kind of a total of 2 lakh rupees to roughly about 75 to 76 lakh beneficiaries. That is what the Mahila Rozgar Yojana was all about. Now we can say whether Tejashwi's promise may be in response to that, or it is in response to the campaign at large. That's a different matter. But yes, to say that in a state, yeah.
Just hold on, Puneet. Sorry for interjection. You made a very interesting point, which basically means that political communication is better served if it is more transactional in nature. And that's how the people understand the communication from the politicians. Now, if I take that argument, NDA has already given a better communication by actually handing over 10,000 rupees in the hands of 1.21 crore women. I mean, they are seeing money here, but on the other hand, what Tejaswi is giving is just a promise that I will give a job but does he have that credibility? Because earlier also, I think in the previous regime, when he was the deputy CM, he did say that he is going to generate employment. Does he have the credibility which can compensate this 10,000 rupees cash, which is actually in the hands of so many women?
Well, I certainly think he does. And there are various reasons for that. One, is that it's got less perhaps to do with Tejashwi's own politics and more to do with how people have come to, and particularly in a state like Bihar, where people are extremely, extremely clued in about political functioning of the functioning of government, the expectations they have from the political party, from their representatives. They're not politically naive people. Now, the fact that yes, over the last 20 years, I'm not just going to say the last 2 months of Nitish's government, but over the last 20 years of his continued government, there have been a plethora of schemes that Nitish Kumar has, brought out, implemented for every section of the society in Bihar. But having said that, my view is that for people, a lot of people in Bihar, I think to assume that they will continue voting for Nitish or for the current government only because they think, okay, 20 years of track record, we've been getting this, so we need to continue voting for this combination. While there may be a section that could subscribe to that view, there will also be an equally large section that is extremely aware of the fact that once a government starts giving out these roles, the only option for the next government that will come, whether it is the same combination or another combination, would be to either continue with the same promises or increase, but not take away from what is already being given, because that will be suicidal.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that assurance, a lot of them would already have politically, and they understand the functioning of these schemes and the politics behind it. Like for instance, when the Mahila Rozgar Yojana was rolled out and this 10,000 tranche was given, the first reaction from the RJD was, and also the Congress and whoever I've been speaking to in both these parties as well as the CPI-ML and CPI, they said that, we will try to explain to the people that, this is a microfinancing scheme. You're giving them money, but they should not be, taken in by this 10,000 because the government will take it back with interest. And which is a fact. I mean, if you go through the fine print of that scheme, it is a fact that this money has to be returned. It's not like you pocket it and don't do anything with that 10,000. But then for a political party to go and explain that, it's too much of an explanation in an election. No voter has the patience to sit and listen to explanations of a scheme. I mean, you go and buy a TV set, you never read a fine print. This is an election.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
I got
So,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. So I feel that that's why I still consider that 10,000 rupees transfer could be a big amount, because the earlier promises were in the range of 1,500 to 2,000 in other states, if you notice. And this is a big chunk, even if the money has to be returned or it is attached, it's tied up to some scheme. But even then, it on the face of it sounds lucrative. That's what I was coming to.
Yeah. So the I'll just quickly wrap up on the other point of Tejashvi's promise that you mentioned, of the jobs. Now, see, yes, he has said within 20 months, a bill to promise one government job per family over a period of 20 months. 20 months. So 20 days, the bill comes in, and 20 months, this thing is rolled out for government jobs. It would be wrong to say that what he means by this is bureaucracy. That is not what he's saying. It's not like within 20 months, every family in Bihar is going to have a bureaucrat. That is not going to be the case. But, and of course, just the sound of the whole promise makes it feel like, this is just something that can't be implemented. But from what I gather, from what I've been able to understand after speaking to people in the RJD as well as the Congress, they said that, look, once we come out with the proper manifesto, what Tejashvi has said is basically just the highlights. We'll come out with greater details of what we mean in terms of job creation once the full manifesto is out. One of the key parts of this job creation scheme, from what I am given to understand, will be opening up, which is again going to be controversial, by the way, but still, it is going to be opening up of the private sector for reservations. And then introducing, a Bihar domicile clause and all of that in that section of reservation also. So that again opens up a big chunk of employment employment avenues is what the Grand Alliance leaders believe. Then you have to look at the figures. So as of now, roughly about 26 lakh people in proper sarkari, like what are called government jobs per se in Bihar. Out of, the Bihar survey says 2.76 crore households in Bihar, 26 or 27 lakh, from what I recall, are the total number of government jobs that Bihar currently has. Out of these 27 lakh or 26 lakh, 12.5 lakh government jobs were created in the last 20 years of the Nitish government, from 2005 to 2025, 12.5 lakh. The remaining from the period before that. From this 12.5 lakh that was created during Nitish's term, Tejashvi claims, now Ashokji would be in a better position to say whether the claim is right or not. But Tejashvi claims that out of this 12.5 lakh, 5 lakh jobs were actually created when he was the deputy chief minister.
Right. Okay. I'll come to you again, Puneet. We have to quickly rotate this. Time is running out. Mishraji, you have two alliances, NDA and then the challenger Mahagathbandhan. They seem to have resorted to, in my view, competitive populism. Where does Prashant Kishore stand here? Because, like you said, it's a caste which plays an important role. Both the sides have a defined caste, at least as their core vote base. Prashant is saying something else. He's saying, look, I'm going to go more about governance. He's promising, I'm going to talk about more basic issues. That's what he's doing. And he actually rejected both the suggestions, both the sides. So where does he stand? Because one expectation was that, and then a number of people also returning from Bihar say that he has emerged as a third force who could actually cause a disruption to an election, especially when it's so closely contested.
Well, uh, Prashant Kishore has been saying all these things. His basic approach is development, jobs, economic development, jobs, and social development. He has been doing it for the past 2 3 years. He, during his yatras and all the press conferences or the public meetings he holds. Now, he issued the first list of 51 candidates yesterday. And if you have seen that press conference, I don't think, if you go by that, the basic thing, the first thing the president, the national president of the Jan Suraj, Mr. Uday Singh, what he started was, he said that we are issuing the 51 candidates, and then he started counting the number of caste and number of the social uh, affiliation of these candidates, saying that we have given 17 seats to the extremely backward caste, 11 seats to the backward caste, the upper caste, and so forth. So he started counting on caste. He started the press conference with this. So how can you say from the other two combinations which you have in Bihar? What the only the only good thing was this press conference, or the number of candidates and the kind of candidates he has introduced. He has taken into consideration their caste affiliation, but they are press faces and they are from the different professional groups. Many of them are doctors, many of them are lawyers, many of them are academicians. One of them is a mathematician. Uh, them are from
Okay.
the police service, central services. So he has balanced the caste combination. At the same time, he has used test spaces and those belonging to the professional groups. So this is the only difference I find in Jansura's first list, and consideration it is still there with him. Now, coming
No,
to his, yeah, you were saying
yeah,
something.
no, there is another difference too, that he is actually constantly raising corruption as an issue. And in the case of,
Yeah.
it could stick to both, because in this case, he is saying the corruption of government never has been such large scale as it is in Nitish government now. He says, personally, I don't think Nitish is corrupt, but his government, people around him,
True. I
are very corrupt. The deputy CM actually has been named by him, Prashant Kishore. Other 4 or 5 members of BJP have also been named by him. And on the other hand, though I think the Jungle Raj and the other issues are there, which is facing, Tejasvi, and he's trying to overcome that and present a new image. But somehow it could stick to him also. But this is one issue which he's raising.
on the Jungle Raj issue, he said two things. First, there there was Jungle Raj, there was law and order problem during the Lalu's regime, but today it is more than that. Situation is more uh, serious than what there was during the Lalu phase. Second thing, he says that corruption, he targets people with corruption. He says the corruption in Lalu's time was a couple of politicians were involved in that, but general impression was that general officers and the other political executives, they were not that corrupt which we have today during the Nitish Kumar government. This is what he is harping on. And I think I agree with him. I think most of the, you talk to anyone in the people, yes, they will agree that the ministers are corrupt, the ministers are fake. There is no work. In fact, you start from the panchayat level to the government level, you cannot have any work done unless you bribe them. This is the situation, and this is the common grievance of the people. If you go to the ground level, grassroots level, you will find that no block officer is ready to do anything. Even the death certificates, people demand money from for people seeking the death and birth certificates. Has created a buzz in the political circles, and he will get some votes because of his this stand which he has taken on corruption and which he has taken. But when it comes to the caste, affiliation. He has also worked on the caste calculation and given, but two things, as I told you, press faces and professional people he has fielded. In fact, one very interesting part of his thing in his candidate is he has, for the first time in the Bihar Assembly, history of the Bihar Assembly, he has given to kinder. Kinder means eunuchs. Even
Okay.
one seat to Kinnar, and it is creating a buzz now that that gentleman who has been named. It's he has got a lot of followings in the social media circle. So this is the only difference he has, but the basic consideration of caste is still there with Prashant Kishore's list also. Let the second list come. We'll see what improvement he has made,
Okay.
and then there was a problem with Prashant Kishore that he is not giving any future planning, future plans about what he is going to do for Bihar if he comes to power or if he manages to
Right.
ally with a combination where he may form the government with other allies. So he has not come out as yet with the blueprint of development in Bihar. He talks about migration, he talks about job creation, but he has not yet come out with a, let him come out with a manifesto if he is going to issue it in a couple of weeks. So let him come out, couple of days rather. So let him come out with a manifesto, then we will see what impact is going to make on the politics of Bihar.
Okay. Thanks. Now I'll come to Kalai. Uh, you see this. Let us examine this scheme a bit. It says, like Puneet explained it, rupees 10,000 has been transferred. It's basically a kind of a loan which may have to repay, because another tranche of 1.90 lakh they will get after 6 months, looking at the promise of, looking at the performance. Now, the scheme, let me just read out, launched during Navaratri. It's fully DBT based, that is direct benefit transfer based. Women can start business of their choice. Every family will have at least one women beneficiary under the scheme. And starting with the support of 10,000, scheme can provide up to 2 lakh based on the success of the enterprise. Women can now open shops selling groceries, utensils, cosmetics, toys, and stationery. They can also pursue livestock related business such as cattle rearing and poultry farming. Now, here is a question. How much of you think this is basically, which could actually, like you said, it could actually create some kind of a, it's not just consumption driven, but it could also create some capital. And the second thing is, are we seeing another kind of pakoda economics? Because the applications of most, I mean, I read in a news report, I may be wrong, but that's what I read, saying that women have applied for opening pakoda and tea shops.
Thank you. I just want to say before I answer this question, I think it is my personal experience because I have lots of friends in BR. I think BR is the only state, probably I would say, I mean not many states, as a you see the very hard-working population. This is migrant, huge migrant coming. Every domain you will find experts, luminaries and all kind of people. And the second is also Bihar population, as Sukhji mentioned, is very astute population. And it's astute in political sense. I mean, they read every between lines. And I don't think any other population of folks is as politically astute as Bihar is. So I am not fully sure electorally just schemes alone or the populism alone, freebies alone will deliver. That's something I want to make when Punitji was mentioning the connection between freebies and the fiscal prudence. What I meant then to respond there is freebies alone nowhere actually worked. There are other aspects. You need to have some broader narrative. This freebies or the doles or populism can be an add-on. You have something else, this can marginally enhance. That's what I wanted to say when he was talking about this. Let that be aside. Now, question is of whether this woman scheme for loan, which is the 10,000 rupees for each woman to create some kind of assets to start business, whether it is workable. I mean, we need to look at this question in two angles. One is to see how much this can actually enhance, bring back dynamism within VR economy. Will this be possible? Will there be kind of build an entrepreneurship thing in Bihar, I would not. It doesn't look optimistic for me. Why I say it doesn't look optimistic to me, unless you create some kind of economic dynamism in the investment-driven route, which generates a culture, which generates in kind of economic activities, then it can work of the woman coming into entrepreneurship, taking opportunities, taking. So unless you create that kind of vibrancy, economic vibrancy driven by investment, this 10,000 rupees, which will think of generating some asset, generating entrepreneurship, I'm not fully sure, because what you mentioned that as they can open grocery shop, they can open some tea stall. I think this is again we are actually getting onto the same consumption driven approach towards growth, which is what Bihar has been having for last 15 years. It has not been able to generate jobs. It has not been generate any private sector entrepreneurship or project. As I mentioned, 75% of state revenue comes from Delhi, and large part of income comes to GSTB from migrants. It is the two drivers of the consumption-driven growth. Unless you drive of some kind of economic optimism, of economic dynamism via private investment, this policy of the populism, even if it enhances the woman income, I don't think that's going to add or complement economic growth. Is the point one. And I also want to make another point here, which is I think seen generally, as Punitji mentioned, that if the other scheme of the job opportunity, giving every government jobs for every households, but if you think that is some kind of NRG, that we have a current NRG, a right to employment scheme, if it is something that kind of enhancing employment scheme in the urban or a rural, even then, if that will work only when you have already some kind of economic growth. For instance, state like Tamil Nadu, here the NRJ scheme really worked for 100% utilization of that scheme here. Why it worked? Because there is a complementary role of the private player. There is a complementary role of economic dynamism. Unless you don't have economic dynamism, just pushing supply side intervention via some kind of support of subsidies and other things, I don't think that will work. Unless you attack the core aspects of entrepreneurship, core aspect of investment, core aspect of infrastructure required for the private investment picking up.
No, I got the point. In fact, I was going to ask that question following Puneet's answer, that it's very well that they are trying to create employment, but where will they create the employment? Because there's no base for that. So you need something to create employment on it. Just saying that. So like you said that most of the thing, there is no manufacturing base. I think services, they more or less they have the same kind of ratio in other states. Agriculture, I think they're largely based on agriculture. So there are some fundamental problems with the state. How are they going to create these? Even if Anganwadi and other such jobs are created, but ultimately when when you don't have that infrastructure to extend these services, how is it going to work? I mean, in any case, I think you have answered this question, but I would quickly ask one question to you, which I'm tempted as an economist. Is there any empirical study to suggest that these kind of benefit schemes, especially they seem to be more targeted at women? And last time also, the percentage of women who voted in Bihar is actually more than men. It's about 5% difference, and they were actually voting more for more women were voting. Is there any empirical study or any such thing to suggest that such impacts? What is the kind of impact it have on women as compared to men? Is there any gender study?
No, there is definitely a study in the sense, either someone studied of Tamil Nadu. There's a scheme in Magalir Udavi Thittam, Kalangar Magalir Udavi Thittam in Tamil Nadu, and there's also a scheme in Maharashtra. There's a scheme in Madhya Pradesh. Each state has some kind of scheme of women empowerment, particularly giving some kind of transfer, financial transfer to women via DPP. But again, it works. I mean, definitely the electorally works. Marge, again, it's not alone, the scheme alone worked, but as I mentioned, you have a larger narrative. This could be an add-on, I would call as a marginal effect. If you have the tight competition between the two political parties, this can actually, bring some, change, to in the party's favor if it brings it. But it's alone, I don't think it worked in context. Right. That's one. But again, we'll have to also make a distinction again, the benefits, economic benefits of these schemes. As I mentioned, I want to repeat again, this kind of populist schemes will work enhancing what you call, if you think of really women empowerment or emancipation of women in a wider context, is workable only when you have other complementary aspects in the economy and polity. What I mean by complementary, school education, GER, and women participation. What is the women participation of the labor market? We are women participation in labor market. One of the poorest in the country. Unless you change that social norm, that the woman, even if you offer an economic opportunity in this kind of financial transfer, they have to utilize that transfer. There you have to change. Woman has to ensure the woman mobility that requires the changing the social norm. So that kind of what I would call as a complementary roles of the both the economy and political things. Unless those things are not worked out, just giving a supply side enhancement via financial transfer alone may be electorally successful, but I'm not sure that economically sustainable, also even empowering in the longer run. I would stop there. Yeah.
Okay. I'll come to Puneet now. I think Puneet, you can take this and maybe do a final wrap up of the whole thing. What happens to SIR? Has it been forgotten? The vote chori slogan, how much effective it is, because after these freebies are announced, and then now when the final ticket list is announced, which is basically largely going to be on caste lines, and people are going to discuss all that. Is this narrative, which was very assiduously built in the early stages by Rahul, does it still stay in the minds of the people? Or it's an underlying, one of the conditions or one of the factors which could, kind of discreetly play its role in the election? How do you see this?
No, it will certainly. See, it's not as if the SIR issue has died down. But there are a couple of aspects with regard to the SIR which would be in play, once the actual candidates announcement and then the whole electioneering campaign and voting and all of that rolls out. First, of course, is whether the SIR issue has died down. I don't think so. I think the opposition has had a lot of success in making that whole vote chori SIR nexus a kind of an issue that's reached the grassroots, that reached households, and has convinced a lot of people that there is something that is fishy with this entire exercise. And let's not forget that it's no longer a theoretical doubt. There have actually been deletions. There have actually been people who've been struck off the rolls, who have now been fighting and struggling to get themselves enrolled afresh. So I think that issue will remain. The Grand Alliance parties will continue to talk about it. Of course, the Supreme Court is also going to give its own ruling once, they gave some fresh instructions the other day, and the matter is now to be listed, to be heard next week again. But now, while that issue remains, see, the other thing is connecting the whole SIR thing to the other issues that Tejashwi and Rahul and others in the alliance are talking about, where they're saying that this is a first step. They want to eventually weed out all of you from the electoral rolls, so that all these schemes that the government is boasting about, that the NDA is talking about, all these things can also be taken away from you. So there is, of course, that element also that the Grand Alliance is going to certainly talk about. Additionally, the problem there is the number of people, the sheer number of people who've been left out of the electoral rolls. Now, if the opposition's hunch is not entirely misplaced, that these are our voters, then of course, even if the SIR has agitated people, the electoral impact of it against the NDA may not be as grand as the Grand Alliance thinks it would be, because a lot of their voters are anyway being weeded out of the lists, as per their own claim. So the issue per se remains a very agitating issue. The impact of it on the election and on voting, one will have to wait and see, just as one will have to also wait and see the full extent of the poll promises that come out from both the alliances. And I completely agree with what Kalai was saying, that, you know, the for an election, for a formation, you know, Grand Alliance or NDA to go into polls, freebies and all of this is only a very minute component of the campaign. A lot of pieces have to fall in place. You have to have the right narrative. You have to have the right campaign, the right candidates. All of that has to work in tandem. You can't just say, "Oh, we've given 10,000 to women, so we're going to win." You know, we know it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, so we'll have more discussion on this. I just have one last word. Ashok, if you want to quickly say on this SIR impact, just in half a minute, we'll close then.
Well, Srini, SIR is going to remain as a major issue of the Mahagathbandhan in the coming elections. In fact, I was talking to some senior Congress and RJD workers. They said, no, you can see still 33 lakh persons' name have been deleted. They have not been included despite all the efforts made so far. So it's going to be a major issue in the election. People, especially when the NDA talks about, the Amit Shah talks about the infiltrators, at the same time, he doesn't talk about the names deleted in the other areas where you will not have infiltrators. They don't have. So this issue is going to become a major issue, and they are planning to use it in their manifestos and use it on public meetings, on day to society to society, family to family contacts. So this issue is going to remain. It's going to be a major issue of the Mahagathbandhan.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all my panelists. It's been a fascinating discussion. I think Bihar elections are especially, compared to other elections, are really very special. We need to discuss more. We'll come back again with another discussion. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.